So we have one more question, and this one is for Senator Collins. You've approached the issues related to climate change in a few different ways. We've heard about some of them. Through energy efficiency, the CLEAR Act, also called cap and dividend, by protecting EPA's authority under the Clean Air Act, by addressing short-lived climate pollutants and cleaning up cookstoves. What's your recommendation for how to move forward in meaningful ways, and how can we all work together, both in the short term and in the longer term?
Before I answer your question, and I promised to answer the question, I realized when I started my remarks today that I did not thank the organizers of this panel. So let me do that before I respond. So I want to thank the Maine Conservation Alliance, the University of New England, Maine Health, the American Lung Association and its Maine chapter, and all of our panelists for being here today and the work that all of you have done in taking the time to come and discuss a very important issue. Now, my advice. I have 3 pieces of advice for all of us who care about this issue. The first is to be practical. The second is to enlist more Republicans in the crusade, if you will. And the third rather, is to secure some small victories. Now let me elaborate on all 3 of those. The first has to do with practicality. In the last Congress, as many of you know, the House passed a 1,400-page bill that was known as the Cap and Trade Bill, introduced by Representatives Waxman and Markey. It was crammed full of special interest giveaways to the dirtiest fossil fuel industrial partners. And it was done that way in order to secure enough votes. It would have had a negative impact on low-income families. It was a flawed, complicated bill that had absolutely no chance of going anywhere in the United States Senate, which at that time was controlled by the Democrats by a fair margin. There were some Democrats who were from coal states who were against the bill. There were some Democrats who, from California, for example, who had qualms about the bill because of the giveaways to the coal industry that were in the bill. So it was also a bill that was rapidly losing support with the American people because of its complexity and because of the concern about the impact on low-income families. In the Senate, Senator Maria Cantwell and I introduced an entirely different approach. It was a 39-page bill as opposed to 1,400 pages. It was called Cap and Dividend because it included a rebate to low and middle-income families so that they would be held harmless. And it took a new approach for assessing carbon at the point of production. It was a good approach, but with a couple of exceptions, we could not get the environmental advocacy groups to back our bill. There were a couple who broke away and said, the Waxman-Markey bill isn't going anywhere. We should get behind this bill. It's bipartisan, it's straightforward, and it takes away a lot of the genuine concerns about the House bill. Well, what was the result? Despite the fact that the Senate was controlled by the Democrats, the bill that passed the House was never even brought for a vote in the Senate. It was never debated. I believe that had there been a more practical approach taken to this issue and had the environmental groups and some of the pro-environment business community rallied around our bill, and some businesses did support it, and there were 2 environmental groups that supported it, we might have had a chance to get something done. It is now much more difficult to get something done. So my first bit of advice is, let's be practical about this. Let's look at the legitimate criticisms, and let's not cling to an approach that it isn't going anywhere. Let's be open to new solutions. Second, we do need more Republicans. And this also relates to my third point about securing some smaller victories to make progress. There are Republicans who have introduced energy efficiency bills. For example, there's a very good energy efficiency bill that I'm a co-sponsor of that I mentioned in my opening remarks that was written by Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, and Jeanne Shaheen, our neighbor Democrat in New Hampshire. It's a good bill. It would make a big difference. It would save consumers money. It's the equivalent of taking millions of cars off the road in terms of its impact on greenhouse gases. Let's rally behind that bill and get it through. There are other Republicans who have taken the lead. I'm one of them, but there are many others on the Land and Water Conservation Fund, another important bill. There are Republicans who are willing to work on these important environmental issues. But if they feel that they are not welcomed, they are never going to put the energy into joining the fight. So we have to try as much as possible. I'm not saying there's going to be an equal number here, or that's what we have to strive for, but we have to point out that these issues affect you, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a Green, an Independent, or not interested in politics at all. And third, let's secure these small victories. Let's pass the energy efficiency bill. Let's pass the clean cookstoves bill that I've introduced with a Democratic Senator, Dick Durbin, from Illinois, that would make a huge difference in decreasing the amount of soot in the air, and would also have a dramatic increase on the physical health of families who are cooking over these archaic, very dirty cookstoves in countries across Africa. And it's not an expensive initiative. It's one that we could do that would make a real difference. It's low-hanging fruit. Let's pluck it. Let's get it passed. Those are 2 examples. I think that my bill with Chris Murphy is another bill that could pass, the so-called super pollutants bill that looks at soot, methane, and refrigerants. And it's helpful for the clean energy industry because we have much better means of cooling now than we used to. We have far better refrigerants than we used to. And we have gotten the industry on board for a lot of the provisions of that bill. Let's pass that. It's sort of like diplomatic relations. If you can get some smaller victories, you start building confidence, you start building interest, you educate people about the issues, and then you can tackle the larger issues. And that's what I would urge all of you who care so much about this issue, to be practical, to enlist more Republicans, and to secure smaller victories. They still matter. Thank you.